Hello and welcome back on my YouTube channel, Parth Doshi Learning by Doing. So this is another interesting video on one of the feature that I'm going to implement or one of the concept that I'm going to implement in UiPath apps. Now, being an UiPath developer, even if you have worked probably 6 months, a year, or 2 years, or n number of years, we are very well versed with what a config file is. Now we have been using config files, we have been building it, we have been adding data to it since a very long time in all the different automations that we have worked in. But have you ever wondered that how you could build the config file for your UiPath apps? Because definitely there is customization, there are configurable data that you will be adding in your UiPath apps as well. And you don't want to really navigate to app, make the changes everywhere if a small change is to be done, right? That is what simplifies when we use a config file in REF framework, the assets, credentials, URLs, anything that is stored in config file, it is just updated over there and reflected in the complete process. So I was just wondering, why not implement the same thing for UiPath apps and make the UiPath apps more efficient to use and avoid the multiple changes that we will be doing in apps, right? So let's get into it, how we are going to do that. All right. So one of the recent videos that I had uploaded was on creating an add to favorites feature in UiPath app. So in just an extended version of that, I'm going to show that how we can create a config file. So now if you see over here, what I'm defining is the app name. Now it is possible that this app names can change. For example, if my current app name is timesheet app or timesheet management app, in future I want the label to change it to financial timesheet or something like that, right? So how can I do that with these? Now let's suppose we are not using config file that I'm going to show right now, but we are using the static hard-coded value. So if that label is over here, if that label is some other page, probably over here, I will have to update it in all the pages. There is a possibility that I can miss that updating as well. And again, if it is published to production, we have to do the iterations and all. So how we are going to create a config file? The concept and the logic is going to be the same. We are going to use data service entities. All right, so let me come to entities. I have created an entity which is known as add to favorites config because my app name is add to favorites. So I'm just doing that add to favorites config. Open that. I have created two columns over here, key and value. That is what we do in our dictionary config files as well, where we are using the Excel file. In key, I have added the key that I want to use, and in the value, I have added the values that I want to use it in my app. So this is treat this as a dictionary. Okay. So your key is going to be the key that you will pass, and your values is going to be the dictionary, right? Now, obviously, you need to add the entity. So I'll come over here, click on entity, and add it to favorites. You will have to create an app variable that has to be initialized on page load. So if I go and do edit over here, entity config, the type should be list source, and list source, the source data should be your config entity, which is there. So when you just try and create a variable, create the type as list source, and of it should be of add to favorites config. If I go to events over here on page load, let me go to home page, events and edit rule. So if you see entity config, you need to use set to value. Entity config, just pass the variable over here. And in value, just open the query builder, select your entity over here and click on save. That's it. Don't add any conditions or anything else. But now what you have done is you have created list source of this complete entity. Now, there is one simple link query, or you can say that expression, you can consider it as an expression that you have to write. You can also use variables over here as well, but we can avoid doing that as well. Now, what I'm going to do is open the expression editor. So here, if you see, I've passed my variable dot data where function of x dot key name. So I want to fetch the value of my key name app1 name. This is what I'm doing. Now it is config driven. Once I write this expression, I don't have to come and update over here. I'll just update my data service entity, timesheet app, and it will be reflected everywhere. So this is the expression that I'm writing. Variable dot data where function of x dot key, app1 name, you have to specify your key. So one thing that you cannot change is your key. The key has to be static, what you are creating once over here. Otherwise, you will have to update it everywhere in the app as well. Then dot first and then value. So the column name is value. That is why I'm typing the value over here. Then click on save. Now if I preview it, all right. And this app name I'm using at multiple places. So if you have seen this previous video, you will get an idea about it. But if not, then please do watch it. So now if you see over here in this particular section, add to favorites, what I'm going to do is I have this. Now here, if you see this app one, it is not config driven. So I'm going to make it config driven. I'm going to copy this particular text from here. That is this text. I'm going to go over here, open the expression editor. For now, I'll just paste it over here. And now I'm going to remove the double quotes. Now over here, I already have one link query that uses as x as a function. So I cannot use x variable. I'm going to use y and it will solve my problem, and click on save. Now, if you see the timesheet app, this everything is config driven. Let's come over here, change this. Financial timesheet app. Let's come over here and refresh this. So if you see financial timesheet app, now this was completely config driven. No app changes required. If you see over here as well, this is a condition that I'm specifying to display that or not, but then this is also config driven. So anything now that you change over here in your config file, if I change this Outlook, just to show the demo of it, with this, you are creating a config file for your UiPath apps as well. And this is going to be really helpful when you are working with things where you are specifying the values in multiple places. And if there is any one change to be made, obviously it is not possible that you might remember every place where you have referenced that particular value or referenced that particular text. So in this way, you can create a config file for your UiPath apps. And also what you can do is on the page load, on the initialization, you can also set the variables so that you don't have to write this expression again and again. But then you can just simply use that variable like app1 name. But that will require creating that many variables as well. So that is up to you. If it is a more complex app, I would advise that you create the variables. But if not, then you can do this. So this is how you can create config file for UiPath apps. So now if you are going to work on your next project on UiPath apps, make sure you suggest to your solution architect or team lead that why don't we try using a config file if you have access to data service. And this could be really helpful in terms of managing the app and managing the different data towards the app. You can write conditions, you can write whatever you want in this particular config file that we are creating using the data service. So I hope you found this video useful, and if you did, please do share it with your friends who are learning UiPath apps or would like to explore more on UiPath apps, and it can be helpful for them as well. So thank you for watching the complete video. Also, please do watch the previous video how to create an add to favorites feature in UiPath apps. See you in the next video.